Hey, friends, welcome back to the Spooky Files. If you're returning, thank you for coming back. If this is your first episode, thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Mary Ellen Quigley. This is where we dive into the paranormal, the unexplained, the I think I saw something, but I don't want to admit it moments that we all have. Today's episode is called Hotels Where Something Checked In and Never Checked Out. Now, this episode is one that hits close to home for many people, especially myself, because I work in the hotel industry and I have stayed in many a hotel over the years. Hotels are strange places when you really think about them. Hundreds of people pass through them every year. Thousands of lives intersecting in the same hallways. Joy, stress, secrets, grief, celebrations, loss. Unlike homes, hotels don't belong to one family. They belong to everyone for a little while, which makes them the perfect place for something to linger. Tonight's stories come from people who either worked in hotels, stayed in hotels, or crossed paths with something that didn't leave when it was supposed to. So settle in, lock your door, maybe put the do not disturb sign out, and let's get into it. Story 1 is called Room 214 Keeps Calling the Front Desk. Our first story comes from Amanda, who worked night audit at a mid-sized hotel for nearly 6 months. She opened her email with, "I don't work in hotels anymore, and this is one of the reasons why." The story goes, "I worked night audit in a hotel off the interstate. Nothing fancy, mostly business travelers and the occasional family road trip. Room 214 was on the second floor near the elevator. It had been taken out of service after what management referred to only as the incident. No one ever explained what the incident was, just that the room was locked, empty, and not to be rented out under any circumstances. About 4 months after I started working there, the phone rang at the front desk around 2:40 a.m. Caller ID said 214. I answered, assuming someone had accidentally transferred a call. There was silence. Then I heard heavy breathing. I said, "Front desk, how may I assist you?" A woman whispered, "I need help." Then the line went dead. I checked the system. Room 214 was unoccupied, still locked, still out of service. I contemplated whether or not to send someone to check the room, but I figured one of my coworkers was playing a prank on me, so I let it go. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was room 214. This time, there was no whisper or heavy breathing, just a steady dial tone sound like the call never went through. This went on for weeks. Calls from 214, always after 2 a.m., always silence, breathing, or faint static. Maintenance checked the phone lines. They didn't find anything wrong. Eventually, a coworker who had been with the property for years told me the truth. A woman had died in that room during a domestic incident. The call she tried to make for help never connected. Management never reopened room 214 because staff who entered the room always had an uneasy feeling. I quit shortly after, but coworkers I kept in contact with claim that the front desk still receives random calls from room 214 all these years later. Now, the first thing I'm thinking is what would happen if they just completely disconnected the phone lines in that room? Like, would you still get these ghost calls from the room, or would that solve the problem? I wish I could tell you that incidences like this are rare for hotels, but unfortunately, with the number of travelers that go through each year, there are many hotels that have sad situations like this. The idea that the woman tried to call for help and that it wouldn't connect is devastating. I don't blame Amanda for quitting. That would definitely creep me out, especially since most night audit shifts are also solo shift, like you're the only person working the desk. There's no way. All right, let's move on, but stay in the hotel because our next story is one that starts quietly and ends with wet footprints. Story 2, is The Woman in the Pool Bathroom. This story comes from a man named Tyler who was staying at the hotel for a work conference. He writes, I was staying at a hotel for a 3-day conference. It was nothing unusual, just a typical chain hotel with an indoor pool where every hallway smells like chlorine. On the second night of my stay, I went down to the pool around 9 p.m. No one else was there, likely because the pool closed at 10 p.m. I swam for maybe 20 minutes before I heard crying. It was soft and muffled, coming from the woman's bathroom near the pool. At first, I assumed someone was upset or hurt, so I called out, Are you okay? The crying stopped. I waited a moment, then knocked on the bathroom door. No response. The door was locked. I went to the front desk to get help. Security came back with me, unlocked the door, and the bathroom was empty. No bags, no towels, no sign anyone had been there, but the floor was wet. There were footprints leading from the bathroom across the pool deck and straight into the pool, but no footsteps that came back out. I was only gone for 5 minutes max, and the entrance to the pool was in full view of the front desk. We never saw anyone leave. I'm not sure if this was really paranormal, but I have no other way to explain what happened. I think this crying woman had to be a ghost. I can definitely see why Tyler feels that way. The thing that gets me is the wet footprints leading into the pool, but none leading out. It makes me wonder why the area would be haunted, though. Like, did something happen in the pool? Did someone drown in the pool? Was there some kind of incident? It makes me wonder, like, could there be something paranormal connected to that space? It wouldn't be unusual, right? Because it is a pool and things happen in pools. But that's definitely creepy, and I thank Tyler for sharing his story with us. All right, one more story today, and this one comes from one of the most overlooked but important roles in the hotel, and that is a housekeeper. Let me tell you, no one holds the hotel together quite like your housekeeping team. So next time you stay at a hotel, make sure you give them a tip and thank them for all of their hard work. Episode 3 is called The Upside Down Furniture. This story comes from Carlos, who worked in housekeeping at a downtown Chicago hotel, but of course, we are not going to say which one. Carlos writes, Hi, Mary. I worked housekeeping for a long time. I've cleaned so many rooms that I've lost count. I've seen strange messes, weird personal items, and many things that don't make sense but could be laughed off. This wasn't one of those things. Room 603 checked out like any other room. No complaints, no late checkout, no damage noted at the desk. When I opened the door to clean it, I actually stepped back into the hallway because my brain couldn't handle what I was seeing. The dresser was upside down, not smashed, not broken, not thrown, just flipped over. Since you work in hotels, you know how big and heavy those dressers are. I was shocked. Nothing else was moved. The sheets were clean, the bathroom was spotless, personal items were gone. It was like the guest had cleaned up after themselves before they left. I called maintenance and security because I assumed it was some kind of prank, but no one fessed up to it. And when the general manager followed up with the guest, they were also shocked. They said they never flipped the dresser. The staff at the hotel joked about it for a while because that's when you do when something makes you uncomfortable. We all thought it had to be a joke or a prank and that no one was admitting to it because what else could it be? The next week, I was assigned that same floor. When I unlocked the door to room 603, my heart dropped. The dresser was upside down, again, exactly the same way. Everything was clean like before. Security pulled the key logs. No one had entered the room overnight. The electronic lock hadn't registered a single use. They also checked the cameras. No one went in, no one came out. It turns out the room was pre-checked in for a group VIP that ended up no-showing due to a delayed flight. At that point, I didn't want to go inside the room anymore, and I asked my supervisor to keep me off the 6th floor, which they did. After that, the room had a reputation. Guests complained it felt off. Some asked to be moved. A few people said things were out of place when they returned from dinner or after being out at a conference all day. And every once in a while, the housekeeping team will find the dresser flipped over. No explanation. I don't work in hotels anymore, but I know the hotel was renovated a few years ago and the dressers were swapped out for large consoles that hold a mini fridge. I sometimes wonder if weird things are still happening in room 603 all these years later. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that an entire dresser was flipped. I mean, I've heard of poltergeists, but flipping an entire dresser is a whole new level of poltergeist. I don't know how I would react to that. Shock for one, but also how? Like, how did that happen? I could see why everyone thought it was a prank or a joke at first because the idea of like a ghost or something flipping over an entire dresser is just hard to even wrap your mind around. I emailed Carlos to see if he was aware of anything happening in that hotel room or in the hotel in general that would, be connected to paranormal activity. And he said not that he was aware of. So that makes me wonder why room 603 and why so much activity there. I feel like there has to be a story connected to it somehow. And maybe someday we will figure it out. And that brings us to the end of episode 4. Hotels where something checked in and never checked out. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Follow me on social media. Leave me a comment because I love hearing from all of you. If you have a story that you'd like for me to share on the podcast, you can email it to the spookyfilespodcast@gmail.com or send me a message on social media. I read every single email or message, and it helps build a community of people who don't just love the spooky and the paranormal, but also are looking for a safe place to talk about all the things we don't always like to admit. Make sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. If you're looking for more paranormal content, check out my other podcast, Hoosier Myths and Legends, where my sister and I share all things spooky from the state of Indiana. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep it spooky, my friends.